Hello and welcome to my very first video ever. I've been thinking about trying this new pasta recipe for a while and I'm excited to see how it goes. We will need a cheese grater, ricotta cheese, pre-strained and dried, a pastry cutter or a regular knife if you don't have one, Parmesan cheese, flour. I've chosen to use wholemeal for this recipe, but you can use whatever you like, some salt and pepper, 3 eggs, and a large mixing bowl and stirring spoon. Let's start by placing the ricotta in the bowl. We should only need roughly 200 grams for this. Then we'll measure out about 1 cup of flour and put that into the bowl. Then we're going to grate a small pile of cheese into the bowl. This can be as much as little as you want. Parmesan doesn't get too melty, so it will still hold its structure while it's hot. Then we're going to crack the eggs one at a time, and we're going to make sure that we remove any eggshells that may or may not have fallen in. Then we're going to add some salt and pepper. You can grate this in as liberally as you like. This is for flavor. Now we're going to stir all of it together, making sure we break all the Parmesan up. Here we can see that the dough is just a little bit too sticky, and we'll need to add more flour later on to correct the consistency. I added roughly a handful at a time until it looked like a round ball of dough. Next, we want to flour the bench, making sure to cover a large enough surface area for when we knead the dough out. Next, we can pop the dough straight onto the bench and start kneading it. Once we've kneaded the dough a little, too much and it will make the gnocchi too hard when we eat it, we're going to use our pastry blade or a regular knife and cut the dough into fourths. Here's a nice shot of the nice little quarters that I've cut. Now we're going to take a quarter and roll it out into a long line. The rolling process can be a little tricky, and this mixture doesn't like to be rolled very well. So you might just need to knead it a little bit with your fingers until you get it into the shape that you want. Now once you've got it to the thickness that you want, then we're going to take the pastry cutter or just a regular knife if you don't have one and cut the dough into little pillows. You can choose how big you want them. Whatever size you choose, just make sure that you cut the pieces evenly. Now, the larger the sizes, the longer it's going to take to cook. I've chosen about a medium size. I think it's the standard. We're going to repeat this process with all of the other fourths until we've got a nice pile of square gnocchi pillows. Now that all of our gnocchi have been cut up, now comes the fun part, and quite personally I think this is the most challenging. That's deciding what shape you want. Here you are limited only by your imagination, and there's no right or wrong way to shape a gnocchi. In this video I've attempted 3 ways to do mine. A more traditional way of shaping them is what you can see here, is pushing the little pillow down the fork and then folding all of the indents around the rest of the little pillow. Although it's an interesting technique, I was a little disappointed with how they turned out, so I decided to swap to another shape. The second shape, which was infinitely easier, was created by rolling the gnocchi into a little ball and pressing down slightly on the top and the bottom to give it a small concave and convex look. This gave it a little indent just to hold some of the sauce later. I repeated this process a couple of times and then decided that I wanted to try a different shape. My favorite shape of all, and by far the most easiest, was to just leave it how it was. Hashtag minimalism. In the end though, I did decide just to flatten and push down on them a little bit, just to create a bit of a little groove just to hold the sauce a little bit more. And here is the finished product. You can see all three shapes in the corners, the really sad fork ones. They were pretty fun, very interesting, didn't turn out that great, so maybe if I tried a different fork or with more practice. Yep, so the rectangular prisms were definitely a favourite. Now that those are done, it's time to make our sauce. Step 1 is to melt the butter into a large pan. Here I've decided to go for a tomato-based sauce. While the butter is melting, we're going to finely cut up a whole onion and then whack it in the pan. We're going to give the onions a bit of a stir so that they cook evenly. And while the onions are cooking, we're going to cut up the vegetables to use later. Again, you can add anything you want to this dish. It's a very forgiving recipe. I happen to have zucchini in my fridge, so I finally cut up 2 zucchinis and then just slowly put them in to make sure that they didn't spill everywhere while they were going in. Then we're going to give the onions and the zucchini a nice stir and a little bit of a flip just to get everything tossed nicely and cooking evenly. Now before we go, we're going to generously rain in mixed herbs with some more salt and pepper. If you have any fresh herbs on hand, you can definitely add those in too. My favorites tend to be parsley and basil because they add, also celery as well, they also add a really quality fresh flavor to the dish. But other herbs that also go really well with the tomato base are parsley, basil, oregano, and a bit of thyme. Okay, so in between these two transitions, I actually forgot to film what was going on. So just as a rundown, I basically added a can of diced tomatoes, some tomato paste, a lot of garlic because that adds quite a lot of flavor, some beef stock to enhance the rich tomato flavor that I'm trying to go for, with a dash of red wine to complement that, some leftover red wine and rosemary lamb I had from the night before, so just cut up some little lamb pieces and chucked those in as well. Cut up some basil and some fresh parsley leaves just to freshen it up, just so it's not too rich and dense. The sauce is pretty much done at this point in time, so we're just going to add a little bit more herbs to spice up the flavor. And then what we're going to do is, you can probably see in the corner, we're going to put the water on. It fogged up. Put the water on to boil so that we can cook the gnocchi. It's important to regularly taste test the sauce as the flavors develop with the heat, especially during the simmer process. Yeah, so as long as we regularly taste testing, then we can just make adjustments as we go. One of the last steps to do is to add in the cheese. So when we're happy with the flavor, we are going to drop in a handful of cheese and a second handful of cheese. And we're just going to stir those to make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom and to make sure it melts in really smoothly with the sauce, so it's absolutely delicious. I'm so excited to eat this. So the water looks ready to start boiling, so we're going to turn the heat down on the sauce and slowly drop in our little gnocchi balls to make sure that we're not splashing hot water everywhere, and just because we don't want to ruin the shape that we spent so long trying to make. Now these cook surprisingly quickly, so just keep an eye on them. They normally take about 5-10 minutes max. While the gnocchi's cooking, I left the sauce on simmer, and you can see here all of that really nice flavor that's come to the top. And I'm just going to add in some of the leftover chopped steak, because why not waste, and just stir that in. Yep, they cook really, really quick. So when they're floating to the top, that means they're done. We're just going to scoop those off and put them in the bowl next to us. Almost got them. Last ones. Alrighty. And here's the delicious homemade gnocchi pasta dish, garnished with a bit more parmesan and some chopped up parsley. Thank you for watching my video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.